Ladies and gentlemen, to get started, please join me in extending a warm welcome to the President of the Australia-Africa Chamber of Commerce, Duncan Harris. Duncan, over to you.
Interested parties, today, the 1st of July 2020, marks a major next step for the Australia-Africa Chamber of Commerce. Over the past 3 years, we've steadfastly put in place a range of building blocks to have us fulfil our goal to be the peak body facilitating trade and investment with Africa by providing our members and strategic partners with the best quality business intelligence, strategic partners, networking events and business matching services between Australia and Africa. Early this year, we determined to put in place what we termed Roadmap 2020 to do so. We've consulted far and wide with government, industry and industry leaders, and one such leader is Hugh Morgan. Hugh has had a stellar business and community career, having been the CEO of Western Mining, along with some other major Australian corporations. A member of the Reserve Bank Board for 14 years, and has had an active and ongoing involvement in a range of significant bodies. Not so well known has been his direct involvement in a number of countries in Africa since the mid-90s, and most particularly currently in Nigeria, where he's developing a world-class nickel deposit, Comet Minerals. Hugh has been kind enough to provide us with some thoughts on Africa and the importance for the role of the AACC in developing trade and investment. Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like you to welcome Hugh Morgan.
Thank you for your comments. It was very kind of you to ask me to be with you at this relaunch of the Australian African Chamber of Commerce, which I have to say I'm delighted to see. I've had an association with the African continent now for quite some time in my role with Western Mining Corporation, and subsequently a personal engagement that started primarily because of my role as chairman of the Commonwealth Business Council and work that took me to Nigeria. Well, I'll come back to that maybe, but more importantly, can I welcome with Duncan all of those who are here with us today on our Zoom conference, particularly, of course, federal and state and other government bodies in particular, supported by the private sector, bring together a vibrant and enthusiastic engagement with the African continent, which is so necessary. I think it's been something that's been lacking. Here we have one of the 5 continents of the world, 2.5 billion people there by 2050, a resource-rich entity beyond measure, quite frankly, that we have to take account of, with challenges but opportunities that go with it. We have a background here, I think, in Australia that has tended to bypass Africa as an entity, but the time has arrived where it's impossible to bypass Africa. It's impossible because of its growing importance, its vibrancy, its culture, its history, and just, quite frankly, the size of the total entity. And so to strengthen our commercial and personal relationships, the launch or the relaunch of the Australian African Chamber of Commerce is something to be welcomed, and I commend it to all of you, and I thank in particular the support that's come from each of the government sectors, both state, federal, and other NGO and other entities. So congratulations to you, and I wish it all the very best in the future.
Well, thank you very much indeed, Hugh, for those remarks. I'm sure we all understand them and would really want to live up to the challenge of bringing forward this whole opportunity. The onset of COVID-19 obviously caused all businesses to rethink the merit or otherwise of their business models, and to address its challenges and to look at the opportunities it has presented. We at the AACC have put together a task force whose charter was not to have us just survive the immediate downturn, but to emerge with a new model greatly enhanced with a significant new benefits for our members and partners. Our starting point was to develop a strategy to meet the new normal and beyond, as exampled by the very fact this presentation is of course online. A full copy of our strategy paper will shortly be found on the website. It encapsulates the major objectives that have been developed and which will greatly enhance the reach and relevance of the services that we offer. This presentation today will showcase the various partner organisations who are joining with us to provide our members with the peerless contacts and connections to enable this to translate into real business opportunities. It is made up of two parts. Those Australian organisations with whom the AACC will be the major conduit to Africa, and secondly, those organisations operating in Africa who can provide the real-time market-facing connection for our two-way trade and investment. To this end, we are, in the very first part, very pleased to announce a partnership with Austrade to work with them to connect Australian business and investors to export opportunities. It is proposed that this partnership will take place in two phases. Phase one will, in the short term, be about promoting, connecting, and informing. There will be short-term incentives. These will be short-term initiatives that support Austrade clients and AACC members. The promoting element will be about the diversification and expansion opportunities in Africa, the leveraging of Austrade's social media platforms to tell the African story and to tell the story of success in Africa. The connecting element will connect Austrade clients and AACC members through targeted and focused events and will leverage content by collaborating on presenters and will increase participant reach by utilising digital communication channels. The inform element will build informative content on key African market and industry sectors, leverage Austrade's Halliday, who's Consul General and General Manager Middle East and Africa for Austrade, to speak in relation to this matter. Ian, over to you.
It really is a great pleasure and privilege to be part of today's relaunch of the Australian Africa Chamber of Commerce. And I'd like to really congratulate Duncan and his task force for all the wonderful hard work that they've done to get to the Chamber where it is today. And we at Austrade are very proud to be strong partners of the Chamber. And we've already had a very strong and close working relationship over the past couple of years. And a great example of that was the seminar series that we ran last year in every capital city in Australia called Why Africa. And it was a program that we jointly delivered along with Jan from Export Finance Australia and the Australian Australian ambassadors who are based in Africa and the High Commissioners. And it was a really well received event in every capital city. The team members of Austrade and Duncan and his team really do share very similar objectives and ideals, and that is to promote and realise the trade investment opportunities that we all know are in front of us. Already there are about 170 Australian companies operating across 39 countries in Africa, and we all know this could be far greater. And I think we'd also recognise it's not just about mining and engineering services. We know that other sectors such as education, health, food and agribusiness, financial services and energy could all play a role in developing trade and investment relationships between Australia and Africa. As Hugh quite rightly said, we also know that Africa is not without its challenges, but what I get excited about, and Hugh also made mention of it, is in the next 20 to 30 years, the population base is going to go from 1.2 billion to 2.5 billion. And with the 15 to 24 age demographic going from a current number of 200 million to 800 million people, all looking for opportunity to grow and develop. Africa is a continent we need to be doing more with to help the continent realise its potential and to help further build Australia's economic prosperity. And as Hugh also said, it's impossible to bypass Africa. But a challenge many of us are well aware of is we have to do quite a lot of work of improving the cultural literacy of Australians about Africa and conversely of Africans about Australia. That's why we did the Why Africa seminar series last year, and why we're now working with Duncan and his team to develop a similar seminar series over the coming months. And as Duncan talked about earlier in his opening remarks, we are also working with he and his team about first the two-phased approach of firstly promoting, connecting and informing, and then secondly, accelerating and growing. So over the coming months, we will be working with the Chamber to deliver another seminar series, also including a yarn from Finance Australia, Export Finance Australia, and our DFAT colleagues. So please watch out for that seminar series. And we're also in the process of developing more longer-term joint plans with the Chamber. So in conclusion, to Duncan and his team, congratulations on today's relaunch. Great job. And we really look forward to a long, successful partnership to help deliver wonderful trade and investment outcomes between Australia and Africa. And Duncan, thanks very much for the opportunity to say a few words today. Much appreciated.
I know it's a early time of day there in Dubai, but it's much appreciated. Whilst Austrade is our national trade and investment body, each state has its own such body. In Victoria, this is Global Victoria, who have 22 offices in overseas markets and who very actively support their state-based exporters. They have a variety of programs and initiatives, along with a Go Global self-assessment tool to help qualify exporters who wish to enter the market. Their business plan template is a very respected tool for those wishing to better understand how they can best be prepared for market opportunities. With that in mind, I'd like to invite the Global Victoria Manager for MENA, James Edwards, to speak on this matter. But thank you and welcome, James.
All hear and see me clearly. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. Look, on behalf of the Victorian Government, I'd like to begin by acknowledging all traditional owners of the lands throughout Victoria and Australia. We're all convening separately but together on the different Aboriginal lands due to the unique virtual web conference circumstances. I personally am working on the lands of the Wurundjeri people here as part of the Kulin Nation here in Collingwood. I pay my respects to their elders past, present and emerging, and I pay my respects to all Aboriginal elders from different lands in which we are each zooming in from today, and any elders that may be here with us as part of the conference. I'm delighted to speak on behalf of Global Victoria's CEO, Ganu Servist, who unfortunately couldn't join us, but does send her regards. Thank you, Duncan, for this opportunity, and thanks for inviting us to speak. Global Victoria is a close partner of the Chamber, and thank you for your work, continue to lead the Chamber. Consul General and Austrade General Manager Ian Halliday, it was a pleasure to hear from you, and thank you for your ongoing support for Victoria and Australia's interests in the region. I'd also like to acknowledge the other distinguished speakers that we're going to hear from today as well. So as Duncan said, Global Victoria is the trade agency for the Victorian Government. We open the world to Victorian businesses and we welcome Victorian businesses to Victoria. We do this by building the skills and knowledge of Victorian businesses to grow on the international stage, promoting the state's world-class industry capabilities and extending this to an international audience. As Duncan mentioned, we're pleased to have an international network of 22 Victorian Government trade and investment offices in key export markets, which provide dedicated support to Victorian exporters. Servicing Africa, we're delighted to have an experienced team in the Victorian Government Trade and Investment Office in Dubai, led by our General Manager, Kasim Yunus. Kasim and his team work closely with Ian, the DFAT and Austrade team to provide tailored support for Victorian companies. And look, I encourage you all to reach out to Kasim and the team if you aren't already in contact with him to see how they can assist. An important part of Global Victoria's work is building strong international partnerships with government and industry bodies. And that's why Global Victoria is really pleased to be able to support the Australia-Africa Chamber of Commerce, including hosting the Chamber's national headquarters in Melbourne at the Victorian Government's International Chamber House. The work the Chamber does to support its members and make connections with markets across Africa is vitally important to Victoria's international engagement work and the performance of the Victorian economy. I'd like to commend Duncan and his team on the work they've done to prepare the Roadmap 2020 and the new strategy for the Chamber's partnership with Austrade, and the suite of activities they've planned to ensure the Chamber continues to provide high quality services and assistance to its members. There are significant opportunities for Africa and Victoria to continue to benefit from the close connections we already share and to keep exploring new and emerging opportunities. And I believe the African Chamber of Commerce, Australia Africa Chamber of Commerce, will play an integral role in helping us achieve these goals. Before I close, I'd just like to mention the support that the Victorian government is providing Victorian businesses to help manage the impact of the coronavirus. In addition to the support the Commonwealth government is generously providing, the Victorian government has also established an economic survival package to support Victorian businesses and workers impacted by coronavirus, providing a combined support of $3 billion. This includes payroll tax refunds, license fee waivers, and one-off grants to eligible affected businesses. All the information for this business support is available on Business Victoria's website, including a very helpful business support and financial assessment tool where you can type in your details and find out what support's available for you. All this information is available on business.vic.gov.au. In closing, I'd just like to reiterate my congratulations to Duncan and the Chamber and emphasise that Global Victoria looks forward to continuing to work closely with the Chamber, our colleagues at Austrade, and supporting Victorian businesses to connect with Africa. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you very much, James, for making yourself available. And as you rightly pointed out, this is not only the national headquarters for the AACC, but you are in fact our landlord, so we pay that with some deference as well. Similarly, we've engaged with Export Finance Australia. And Export Finance Australia is the Australian government's export credit agency. It helps provide expertise and solutions to drive sustainable growth through loans, guarantees, bonds and insurance options to support SMEs, corporates and governments to realise export opportunities or contribute to the export supply chain. They have played an invaluable role and as Ian has alluded to, worked with us last year on Wine Africa, and indeed I'd be delighted to invite Jan Fugter, who's the Director, Project and Structured Finance for Export Finance Australia, to have a few words as well. Welcome, Jan.
Thank you, Duncan. And thank you for inviting Export Finance Australia to be associated with the relaunch of the Chamber. As background, we continue to work with Australian companies to support their activities in Africa and elsewhere in the world. Our role is to provide financial support to Australian exporters and companies that are active in Africa and to support their overseas activities. Export Finance Australia is part of the Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade portfolio. We work closely with Austrade and also look forward to continue to work with the Chamber in supporting Australian commercial activities and involvement in Africa. Given that you've gave a fairly comprehensive introduction, there's not really much more I can add without going into enormous amount of detail, so I think I'll leave it at that. Thank you, Duncan.
I should also add that part of your remit is not only just to help the exporters, but indeed the very people they're selling to also help underwrite their financing, something that I found was really quite something. And I congratulate Export Finance on their reach in going to the markets and supporting our exporters and doing so. So thank you for being available.
Yeah, it's a pleasure, Duncan. And just on that point that you made, yes, we do provide finance to the buyers of Australian goods and services, but the way we view that is we're actually providing indirect support to Australian exporters by being able, enabling their clients to procure their services and goods. So ultimately, the focus for us is always on the Australian companies.
Again, thank you very much indeed for being available, Jan. We're delighted, of course, to be working with such important bodies to help coordinate our export efforts. And now for the second part, those companies who can provide the all-important on-ground contacts and connections. Firstly, a core objective has been to develop a business intelligence system that is both sustainable and scalable. We've branded this product the Australia Africa BI Hub. It has content that is relevant, distinctive, and covers countries, sectors, and company contexts. Our Business Intelligence Hub contains non-public content derived through special relationships and industry sources in Africa and elsewhere. A prime example of such intelligence includes Asoko Insight, Africa's leading corporate data platform. With over 72,000 Africa-based companies, it assists financiers, corporations and governments to verify corporate and individual data across Africa, and it provides deep insights into Africa's most dynamic economies, the people who run them, including their executives, their directors and their shareholders. Such data will enable AACC members to obtain targeted market analysis, discovery and due diligence support. Sourcing reliable information to identify, verify and onboard corporate clients across Africa is all too often too time-consuming and wildly expensive. AACC's exclusive relationship with Asoko Insight will provide purpose-built solutions with enterprise access to instant, accurate and up-to-date information on the continent's leading growth markets, businesses and the people who run them. All too often, companies searching and assessing partners in Africa spend a disproportionate time and money due to the following three challenges. First, private company information in Africa is either unavailable, unreliable, or cost prohibitive. Sector composition is opaque, making it difficult to assess and analyse competitive landscapes and market share. And company due diligence comes at a premium due to inefficient means to access data and documentation. The AACC solution, in conjunction with Osaka Insight, is to provide on-demand data mapping with comprehensive and customised maps of companies, company stakeholders and deals in target countries and subsectors to meet a variety of objectives in the research lifecycle, from initial industry landscaping to the commercial due diligence of a target deal. This is another very important element of what we've been able to put together. And with that in mind, I'd like to invite the Osoko Insight CEO, Rob Withagen, to speak with us online from London. Welcome, Rob.
Thank you, Duncan. I hope you can hear me okay. Great, it's a pleasure to be here. Let me start off by congratulating yourself, Duncan, and your team in the Chamber's relaunch. We first engaged over 2 years ago on a potential partnership between the Chamber and Asoko, and it's great to see your efforts coming to today's events. And I wish you all the best in further rolling out your ambitious plans for the Chamber. We're honored and privileged to be a partner in that roadmap. I mean, you've given quite an extensive description of what we do as a business and how we help bridge the data gap. So I won't add too much to that, but it's a great opportunity for a business like us to also engage with the Australian private sector, which, as has been mentioned on the call, is quite underrepresented when it comes to trade and investment in Africa. I think everybody on this call believes that there's a lot more opportunity for Australian companies on the continent, and well, it's in all of our goals and interests to further the Australian footprint on the continent. Data is a critical piece of the puzzle in identifying trade and investment opportunities. That's what we as a business specialize in. As you mentioned in your kind introduction of the company, we have analysts across the continent who really go out and identify trade partners, but also do the necessary contextualization of the operating environment that these partners operate in, as well as the composition of the companies themselves in terms of revenue size or shareholdership. Important data points for any foreign trader or investor to be aware of before engaging with companies across the continent. So we're keen and excited to make our contribution to furthering the Chamber's agenda. We look forward to a fruitful partnership, and once again, all the best with the rolling out of your strategic roadmap. Thank you, Duncan.
Well, Rob, thank you for making yourself available this morning there in the UK. We very much look forward to this. It might have been 2 years in the waiting, but we'll make it very effective for both, I'm sure.
Absolutely.
The Osoko Insight tie-up will also be mirrored with other significant associations we've put in place. For instance, we already have a partnership agreement, as does Osoko Insight, with Invest Africa. Some of you will recall that the current Invest Africa resulted from the merger of the long-standing Business Council for Africa with Invest Africa. Invest Africa is a trusted entry point into Africa, connecting business and investment through a unique range of services and events. We at the AACC look forward to bringing their networks and their deep commercial influences also to our members. Our drive to ensure, though, that we have the deepest intelligence across the Africa markets has also had us joining with a global leader in this whole area, IHS Markit, with their new intelligence product. By connecting data across various variables, their analysts and industry specialists can present our members with a richly and highly integrated view of Africa, as it reveals interdependencies across industries and markets with a 360-degree view of risk, opportunity, and financial impact. I'd really like to welcome Anna Matthewson, who's a Director, Country Risk Consulting with IHS Markit, to speak to us. Welcome, Anna.
Hi there, and thank you very much for having us today. As I think all the other speakers said, it's a real pleasure to be here and be part of this partnership. And I mean, IHS Markit is, as you kindly said, it's a global leader, but maybe just to provide a little bit of context, if others haven't heard of us before. Essentially, you know, what we do at IHS Markit, we're an information company. So we have expertise across the world's largest industries, and we leverage technology and data science to provide insight, software and data to help our clients make better decisions ultimately and drive their growth and performance and efficiency. The major industry areas that we cover are energy, financial services and transportation. But to kind of bring this back to where we are and the team that I'm in is I'm work in the economics and country risk group, and we provide ultimately that horizontal view across those three industries. So obviously all industries and markets happen in a place, and it's our group who provide that view of what are the economic forecasts, what is our view for all the country risk types that you might encounter entering new markets, looking at commodity prices, the kind of full perspective of those markets. And I think it's said quite a bit with other speakers, and you mentioned it, Duncan, that you know that the size of the opportunity in Africa is huge. So what we try and do is ultimately help our clients and help obviously partners of the Chamber in time to identify those opportunities and then map out their market entry strategies. So who they'll be working with, what is the size of the market, and then once they're in the market, how do they operate safely, efficiently and profitably. And our country risk team for Africa is the largest in the market. We have a broad set of sources and contributors across the continent who deliver the baseline analysis and data into our core team, and then we deliver that out to clients in a range of different means, both qualitative, quantitative, and so on. So that's a little introduction, but again, big thank you for having us today, and we look forward to working with you.
Anna, we welcome you working with us because you're one of the consequential players, and as such, it helps build our team to be exactly that, of consequence. Another substantial, though, and important connection that also includes the Johannesburg-based Trade Advisory, who've developed a service, Trade DSM. Now, DSM stands for Decision Support Model, and which can allow subscribers to develop an in-house capability to apply the model as a platform for advising organisations on various realistic export opportunities, along with strategic advisory services. With that in mind, I'd like to invite Martin Cameron, who's the Managing Director of Trade Advisory, to expand on that for us. Thank you, Martin.
Hi, everyone. Duncan and team, congratulations with this major step. We hope to work with you in the near future. I think, as you mentioned, the core function of your organization is to make connections between supply and demand, service providers, and people looking for services. In that sense, Trade Research Advisory, we're a spin-out company from the Northwest University in South Africa, and our focus is on specifically fact-based advisory services and intelligence to export promotion and investment agencies, government departments, as well as individual companies. We quite work a lot with exporters themselves. And our core focus is on identifying what we call realistic export opportunities. And as Duncan mentioned, our trade intelligence tool titled the Trade ESM is based on 25 years of academic research, but before you run away, academic research focused on applied export promotion and opportunity identification. The World Trade Organization recognizes this also from a trade policy perspective as a trade facilitation tool. We cover economies, obviously South Africa and the other SADC countries, but also in the EAC, Rwanda, Kenya, Tanzania, Uganda, and then more recently Tunisia. We've done models for Netherlands, Belgium, Brazil, Thailand, and China in the past. And most recently, we actually concluded the model for Australia, commissioned by the Trade and Investment of Queensland State, the Trade and Investment Promotion Agency. And we are looking forward to utilize these resources and our intelligence for the purposes of your members and the Chamber going forward to increase trade between Africa and Australia. Thank you for the opportunity.
Well, Martin, thank you very much indeed for being available there in Joburg. Ladies and gentlemen, these organisations and others with whom we're in negotiation will be the bedrock of the rich business intelligence system, which we will provide to our members with such important line items as, well, regular reports, which will be country-based, economic, country risk and industry. Bilateral reports, trade and investment, statistics, incentive updates and success stories. Export database, access for exporters to Africa. A partner list in Africa with a list of potential partners. And of course, in an ongoing way, news in Africa and Australia of business, political, economic, topical and relevant news alerts. These initiatives, and this I have to say has been alluded to already by Ian, but will manifest itself with the commencement of the Africa Calling webinar series with our partner organisations, along with forthcoming podcasts on topics targeted to provide constructive and value-added insights into doing business with Africa. And as Ian rightly pointed out, this is a direct follow-on to the Why Africa National Seminar Roadshow we conducted last September, and which was such a resounding success. We envisage that these platforms will provide a great opportunity for member companies to participate in promoting their goods and services, and look forward to receiving expressions of interest for them to do so. Our revisiting of the AACC has caused us to rethink our branding, marketing and communications. So please, let's just take time out to see the official release of our new branding. Our brand identity and logo is for the Australia-Africa Chamber of Commerce, has been designed by the brilliant, in fact, world-ranked team of Next Brand Strategy and Design. The bird symbolically represents the values of our organisation in that it embodies and embraces both Australian and African motives. In taking flight, it represents the aspirations of the businesses we represent, the opportunities we facilitate, and most importantly, the seed it carries in its mouth represents the very start of promoting growth opportunities across our two continents. With so many questions being registered in chat, let's take a few minutes for question and answer. And to that end, I'd ask our moderator, Nissan Naidu, to handle this on our behalf. Nissan, over to you.
Thank you, Duncan. I think there was just the one slide of the reveal of the logo, which I had a little bit of a technical difficulty, which if we have a moment, I'd like to be able to share once Q&A has taken place. Now, what I'd like at this point is our panelists, if you don't mind, to come back online and join us. And once again, to all our attendees in the chat box, please feed in your questions. We'd love to hear them and put them to our panelists. So we've got a few questions that have come up already. And the first question, and I'm going to summarize the question, which says, the opportunities in Africa seem to be abundant and great. My question leads to the security issues around Africa. The perception of Africa is that it is a high risk from a security perspective. I'd like to know some thoughts with someone on the ground in Africa as to how safe it would be to do business in Africa. Who would like to take that question? Martin, if you don't mind, I think that might be something I'd like to direct to you first, being Johannesburg-based.
Sure. Why is that? you think Johannesburg is the worst? No, I think the quick answer to that kind of question is Africa is a big place and consists of many countries. One of the things that I've experienced with people not from Africa and not dealing with Africa with no experience about Africa is that they treat that as, you know, that shitty little other place, and they forget that it's a big continent, many different countries, many different civilizations and ethnicities. So to say Africa is dangerous to operate in is very too general and misleading. I think there are spots, as in any place in the world, New York, the Bronx, south side of London, where Paris, I was mugged in Paris in February, to give you an idea, on the tubes. So the reality of the matter is these things happen and are existing anywhere in all markets. You need to look at the specifics of where you want to trade, when you want to trade, and what you're trading about. And in that context, look at the risk evaluation. Be careful for generalizing. There are some excellent places in Africa where I feel safer than in New York or in Paris or in London. And then there are places where I don't. So, and the same for any other part of the world. So please don't generalize. And I think generally the Ubuntu, the attitude of Africa is we want to do business. The people are very nice, very open and friendly, and one should capitalize on that.
Thank you, Martin. And I think, sorry, was that you, Anna?
Yes, I had a comment, if that's all right.
Please.
Yeah, no, just to echo what you were saying, absolutely. I mean, one of the main questions we have from our clients is around location risk for Africa. And one of the tools we've built out is a very advanced geospatial mapping tool, which gives you very detailed location risk analysis. So it goes to a granularity of 500 meters squared. So it does not allow you to make those generalizations. And it's incredibly helpful for investment because you can demonstrate that, you know, operating in Nigeria, for instance, is very different wherever you're operating. So if you're operating in the north, for instance, where there's issues around Boko Haram, then obviously there are certain dynamics, but there are other places within the country which would come up on our map as, you know, essentially green. So it's really, really key to have the right intelligence at a location specific level, because even within countries within Africa, there are huge differentiations between the types of risk, level of risk, and so on. So it's really about getting the right information to help you make those decisions better, and then be able to communicate those up within the organization so you can demonstrate that you really understand the operating environment.
Well, thank you, Anna, and thank you, Martin. I hope the person, and I wouldn't want to identify where the question came from, but I hope that answer was helpful. The next question, and without me filtering, touches on aspects that have been covered before, but I'm going to ask it again. The question asks any one of the panelists to please talk about, very briefly, what are some of the key challenges to doing business in Africa? Now, I think, yet again, that has been covered, but it wouldn't hurt if one of our panelists can just touch on that as well.
I can take a first stab at that, Nissan, if that's okay.
Please. Thank you, Rob.
I think, yeah, I think, and this is the business that Isoko is in particular, but I think a big challenge is access to right data, right information, in particular for parties operating from abroad. And the earlier question around security is an unfortunate outcome of that lack of information. I think what we're receiving in terms of media coverage outside of the continent is often quite biased towards the negative and the well, I would say exciting sort of attention-grabbing headlines, but not necessarily informative of opportunities and the nuances that exist in those opportunities. And that has everything to do with many countries in Africa struggling with still quite an unstructured data infrastructure. It's not straightforward to understand which companies are operating in a particular sector, or who the right individuals within the company might be to have an exploratory conversation on a potential partnership with. or what sort of infrastructure exists in a country to ship products from A to B, or what financial opportunities might be available within the country to finance products or services. So I think a big challenge, and one that a lot of people on this call are working on, is bridging the information gap that is still quite pervasive, quite rife across the continent. We see some good improvements in that, particularly in more progressive, outward-facing countries in East and Western Africa, Southern Africa as well. We see private and public sector initiatives to increase the access to data, to increase transparency standards, whether it's from the corporate or the public sector. But there's still quite a bit of work to be done, and yeah, that's also where I think the role of data providers such as Soko Insight, as well as other companies on this call, have a particular role to play.
Thank you, Rob. And just picking up on, I think there's a theme emerging on this, and I speak as a fellow South African, having been born and raised in Africa myself. Africa must be experienced. To know Africa is to experience Africa. No amount of textbook and data can give you the heart of Africa. And I can say this here again with a lot of bias. There is a love and a warmth to Africa that can only be experienced when you literally visit Africa. So I think the perception of Africa sometimes can be misleading. But I think with organizations like we have with IHS, with Trade Advisory, and yourself at Asoko, this certainly will help our membership and would-be investors. The next question that comes through says, does the continual portrayal of poor Africans by the likes of MSF, Save the Children, Oxfam, etc., does that deter international investors from investing in Africa? Who would like to pick that one?
I can maybe make a comment. I think we need to ask the international investors that question. What we see in South and Southern Africa is that there's actually a lot of investment related to services to alleviate some of that poverty. We've got, for instance, the Susan and Michael Dell Foundation spending $200 million in school upliftment programs, and somebody's got to supply equipment. They don't only buy Dell equipment for those people. The money is independent from the brand. So we see a lot of business opportunities for people around that, and investors capitalizing on those opportunities, especially in the service provision side and food. So I wouldn't say that it deters investors, but I don't think it's maybe you can treat it as a necessary but not sufficient condition for investment decisions. Obviously, there needs to be a bigger market at play over and above that, but there's a lot of opportunity associated with service provision, and the clients there would generally be the governments as opposed to necessarily private sector that are associated around these opportunities to do poverty alleviation and infrastructure build, etc.
Sure, thank you, Martin. And I think I might refer to a dinner we had not so recently where Duncan and I attended, hosted by the South African government based here in Canberra, under the banner of Brand Africa. And I think there's a lot of work that's being done and yet more to be done to brand Africa as a continent. And I think also we tend to forget that Africa as a continent has got 54 countries in it. You know, it's a massive continent, which leads me to the next question. And I think Hugh made a comment on the fact of the young demographics. So the question comes in, says, given Africa is expected to be the youngest continent in many favorable ways, what is AACC's strategy to engage the relevant demographics and industries, such as fintech, that is expected to be a bedrock of Africa's prosperity? Now, I'm going to invite one of my fellow colleagues, Bobbin Tomic. Bobbin, for those that don't know him, has been an ardent supporter of Africa as a continent, having worked many years on the continent, and now a certainly valuable contributor to the AACC. Bobbin, if you don't mind joining us, I'd love for you to get your thoughts on that point.
Okay, thank you, Ines, and thank you for the question. I think we've touched on some very important points around cultural understanding, communicating across the two continents. There's a huge amount of opportunity for us to really understand Africa and understand Australia, looking at it from the other way point of view. In terms of the strategy, I guess our strategy really is client focused. We aim to be as relevant as possible. So depending on the scenario and the opportunity, we really need to deep dive in terms of the needs of the clients. And then looking at how we can engage with the client directly, with the member and so on, and importantly with our partners in the Australian government, Austrade and so on, and also our partners on the ground in Africa. So I guess the different realities on the ground would depend on the segment and the opportunity. And of course, having lived in Africa for 6.5 years, I think we from the Australian side really can do a lot of work to understand the different markets and the issues and the opportunities. And certainly, you know, the continent's been stereotyped in many ways, as are many countries around the world, having lived and worked in different places. The stereotyping, the generalization is quite, can be quite acute. So I would encourage all the different stakeholders and interested parties to visit the specific countries, and then looking at the sectors that you mentioned in relation to fintech and others. I think it's really a case of sitting down and looking at each sector with our partners in Africa and diagnosing the opportunity and how we can support. And I would like to also emphasize that it's a bilateral scenario. So yes, we're supporting Australian businesses moving into Africa, but at the same time, there's huge amount of opportunity for African businesses to move internationally and move into Australia, whether that's through an FDI scenario or others, then that's subject to discussion. So that would be my general comments on that, Nesson, but I'm open to any direct discussions on that post this session.
Sure, Bob, and I think I share your... Please, Ian.
Just to add to that, sorry. I was the one that sort of made mention of just the exceptionally large increase in the younger demographic. And I think part of it, we've talked a lot about cultural understanding and literacy of Australia in Africa and conversely. And I think we've all got a role to play about how do we continue to promote what's on offer, both in Australia and in Africa. Part of that is also about the education opportunities. And I think if we can promote the education opportunities, particularly with this growing younger demographic, and it's not just international student recruitment, it's also what we call transnational education. So we already have a number of Australian universities that set themselves up either in Mauritius or Dubai to attract students from Africa to provide Australian curriculum. And so that's, and not funnily enough, but as a result of COVID and the sort of cessation of students coming from China, all of a sudden this region is becoming much more attractive from a diversification perspective. And so if we can continue to have the dialogue with our, it's not just tertiary but also vocational education sector, I think we certainly have a role to play about how do we, one, upskill and provide tertiary education, but in country, how do we build capability in a vocational sense for such a young cohort, such a large and young cohort of people? And so that's working with some of the Australian companies that might already be in Africa and talking to them about what do they need help for in building capability for their local workforce. So I think education in the next 10 to 20 years is really going to provide a great opportunity that then feeds into those other sectors that we talked about around health and fintech. So I think we'll find there's going to be much more interest in Africa in the coming months and years, particularly COVID has really probably got a lot of organisations now thinking about diversification away from the traditional markets of China, Southeast Asia and India.
Thank you, Ian. And may I just add at this point, because there's just a whole stream of questions coming through and time does constrain what we can and can't put to the panel today. We have one question directed to Jan, if Jan's still with us. Jan, are you here? Jan Fokter? No. Okay. I'll pass that question. I think I want to give a plug for our forthcoming webinar series, and just looking at the chatter going on in the chat box at the moment, I think this conversation, this dialogue could literally take a lot more time than we have allocated for it. And to that end, I'd like to say that time permitting, in the next few days, we will attempt to answer as many of the questions that have been put on the chat box, and we'll put them up once the new website has been launched in the next few days. So at this point, as I said, I'm mindful of time, so I'm going to bring the questions and answers to a close, and I'm going to throw back to Duncan, if you may allow me, Duncan, just to once again thank you to all our panelists, and I'm sure you will do the same in a few minutes. So thank you, ladies and gentlemen. I appreciate your time, and for many of you, it's been very early to jump on board and add your thoughts and to support the AACC. So thank you very much, and I'm just going to go back now to our logo that's been designed by Nick's Brand and Design, and just show you what that looks like. So over to the logo. Thank you. We had some very overzealous people putting together those slides, all very happy and proud of that logo. So Duncan, I'm now going to hand back to you. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you very much indeed, Nissan, and to panel. The thing that really comes through, of course, when you have the opportunity to have these leaders in their own right speaking on behalf of their companies, is that one of the things that's always been very apparent for most of us here in Australia is the issue and the importance of demystifying the way in which we can engage with and work with Africa. And of course, it's the whole objective of what we're announcing tonight and what we're looking to take forward that really reflects that. How do we demystify it? And to be able to make it comfortable for everyone to make investment decisions in the way in which they would anywhere around the world. And whilst we celebrate this repositioning, our fundamental purpose is also, I might tell you, to make the member and prospective member engagement seamlessly satisfactory. And to this end, we've deployed an end-to-end Chamber of Commerce software application, which will in fact completely simplify enrolments, payments, and engagement opportunities. It will even have a user-friendly app application. There will be a redesigned website, and we'll be connecting with you across all social media. We are, after our recent surveys, offering a membership fee level that reflects your various needs, and there will also be important sponsorship and partnership opportunities to enable you to best position your company. This massive endeavour on our behalf would not have been possible without the unstinting efforts and focus over the last 7 weeks of those committee members who have made this possible. I'd therefore like to publicly recognise and thank Boban Tomic, who you've just heard from, who's driven the development of our strategy, along with Andrew Patterson and Roger Phillips for business intelligence, Julian Challingsworth, as Treasurer, Nissan Naidu, who's responsible for our new brand development, marketing, communications, Adam Goldner, through his legal responsibilities, and Vice President Hedy Goldberg, diplomatic relations. All of us, of course, were ably supported by our operations manager, the tireless Ivy Wang. We thank you for joining us today. We thank those who are already members and otherwise invite those who would like to join to have some direct one-on-one discussions with us at the AACC to let us be your gateway to business success in Africa. We'll be following up for all those who've registered to attend with a view to having all of you become members and to help each of you to prosper by way of the various partner organisations who with us can provide you with such positive pathways. Thank you one and all for being in attendance. Thank you again. We look forward to working with you.